What's up, YouTube? So I'm going to continue on with the BMW. I've basically going to continue on right where I left off. So we've got the cylinder head installed and it's torqued down into place. Now the next steps that I'll be taking are I've got to get this stopper back in there, and it actually stops the valve lift shaft, I'll call it, the shaft that runs through here for the vanos. And this is the stopper, so it doesn't actuate backwards too far. And then I've got to basically put in the sensor in the front, some hardware to hold the timing guide in place, and then start figuring out my my timing sprockets and put the alignment kit in place so I can kind of figure out how that works and how it attaches and lines everything up. I've been trying to get the pin down onto, I guess it goes into the flex plate or the flywheel, and it locks the crankshaft in place. And I'm trying to put the pin in there, and I can't seem to get it to go through, so I'm pretty sure I'm at top dead center. So I can't tell why it's not going through. And I've had the idea, if I hold up tension on the chain, maybe I'll remove the starter, hold tension up on the chain, and then kind of just roll the engine back to see if I can see where this hole basically comes up through. It's located down in here, and I got a feeling if I take the starter out, I should be able to actually see it and figure out why my pin isn't actually going into it. Hopefully I don't have to take it that far, but I may have to. So set up the camera and do some time lapse again. Just starting putting all this stuff together, and when it gets to the point where I start getting into the timing kind of stuff, then I'll come back and kind of explain to you what I'm doing. So it really didn't take me that long to get back together. I do have everything exactly lined up as it was before, so there's still ink on the chain lined up with that line. The tone wheel for the sensor lines up where I marked it there. We got our exhaust and our intake sprockets. The exhaust is definitely on the same mark there. So in theory, I might be able to lock these down, put everything back together, and have this engine run properly. But that's kind of a little bit of a dream. It wouldn't be exact, and that's 100%. The way to get it exact is to use this kit. So I kind of started to dig it out and figure out how I'm going to get this on here. It really didn't want to go on for the first reason. This bar was hitting in here, So I actually took one of the bolts out and just gave it a little turn, tightened it back up. These guys I loosened up a little bit so they walk around, and they basically have to slot right down onto the camshafts. So with a little bit of wiggling, that falls right into place. And I have clearance over here because I've moved that. I would tighten these down to make sure I have the camshafts perfectly set. And then once that's all in place, you grab this guy, and this is the actual alignment tool. So it's got these little pegs sticking out of it, these little nubs, and they actually go into these holes. So you bolt this guy to there after having those lined up, and as you can see, I am very, very close. Like, it'll almost go in there. Now, has the crank moved and is the crank in the proper position? Well, the only way to rely on that is to get that pin in there. So I think that's where I'm going next. I may actually put in the chain tensioner and temporarily tighten the cam sprockets just so I can roll this engine a little bit. And I may have to remove the starter to find this keyway and be sure that I've got this thing set 100%. I don't want to take it back apart and do it a second time. The problem I was having was getting this keyway into the hole and into the back of this flex plate back here. So I tightened up the camshafts, I locked the cams in place, I locked them down because I know I'm really close. I rotated the crank very slow just to make sure there'd be no valve contact. And I've rotated it around to the point where I've almost come to top dead center on the cams, and there's my hole right there. So that's what I got to get into to lock the crankshaft. And so my first thing was locating it for one, and making sure that this pin went into the hole, which it does. So I kept on trying to get it into the service hole down here, and I was having a really hard time. I mean, I couldn't get it past this point. So I just kept on forcing it back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, to the point it went in a little bit, and I kept on taking it out and cleaning it up, and I get a little bit of engine oil on the end of the pin, and it got to the point where this guy will slip in all the way now. So it was really just the case and maybe a bit of corrosion on the case that was holding out the pin. Everything may have been that close that the pin may have gone in the first time. So now I'm going to rotate it around, make sure I get the pin in place, and that'll have the crank in the proper position, and then I can reinstall the alignment kit. So I think I'm going to start by putting the pin back into the hole. And getting it to the point where I think it's, hitting the flywheel. So once it's touching the flywheel, I want to slowly rotate the crank, or turn the crank, while applying pressure on the pin. For some reason I'm still having a bit of trouble getting this keyway to go all the way in. So I've actually sanded down the end of it a little bit, trying to take the paint off, because that's usually the problem. Okay, so I fought with this thing quite a bit, more than I should have had to. I probably turned the engine over maybe 4 times before I finally got that key to drop in. And that was after sanding it and everything. It's definitely in place. The crank is locked in the proper position now. I can be 100% confident about doing the timing. So now with the crank actually locked in position, I can see how close I was. And you can see I'm really close with the camshafts anyway. The intake seems to be out just a little bit. There we go. It's best to bolt this guy to the head, but the bolts that came with it, I can already tell, are going to rip the threads out of this aluminum head, and I'm not going to thread them in there. I'm just going to have to put a lot of weight on there. I don't expect it to move when it's locked down onto the cams. So first things first, I need to actually loosen the camshaft sprockets again. Just about there, just so these tone wheels will actually turn. And then I'll grab the alignment tool and just sit it on top of the head and kind of turn the tone wheel so that the pins of the alignment tool will line up. And kind of go into place just like that. So I get the proper bolts for the alignment tool. These ones are in a lot better thread condition than the long bolts. And I mean, we could tighten them pretty much by hand. The tool won't even move if you get a good grip on them. Okay, I couldn't actually find the torque specs for these in my own material, but from what I've come across, it is either 20 Newton meters or 15 foot-pounds for both of them. So on top of the 20 Newton meters or 15 foot-pounds, we need a 180-degree turn. So I'll probably do this turn in 2 stages, 2 90-degree turns. There's 90 degrees. And there's another 90. Those get real tight. And the same with the exhaust. So now the time is completely set. We can go ahead and get rid of the tool. We don't need to have this on here anymore. I figure it's going to take a little bit of wiggling and prying to get it off because those pins are pretty tight going in. And the camshaft locking tool can come off. And then last but not least, I'll go ahead and get this crank holding pin out of there. Because that could be catastrophic if you left it in there. I'm just starting to realize how much footage I've actually compiled of doing this, and how long it actually takes to do. So I've decided to shorten the video and just kind of end it here and pick it up the next time. The next video I'm probably just going to have to plan a lot of time lapses and blast through this job, show you all the torque specs and kind of how I did it, so that I can finish it up. Because now it's just starting to drag on a little bit too long for me. I do have a little bit more of it completed already, but you know, just going to have to work on it when I got time. I've been doing a couple jobs out my driveway which have really used up a lot of my spare time, so I knew that was going to kind of happen, waiting for parts, but now I can just kind of keep on going on it. Hopefully I don't think anything else is coming right away. And if you have the time, make sure to go check out my Instagram and the Facebook, I guess. I'm not supposed to mention Facebook on YouTube, but whatever. I got teaser pics that I usually put up there, which may relate to the next video coming up or something that's coming up in the future, or just pics that kind of stuff I come across in the automotive industry. So yeah, if you like this video, definitely give it a thumbs up, and if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button for me. Leave your questions and comments further down below, and I'll see you in the next one.